What's up? So, been busy the last couple days, doing a lot of volunteer work. Last update, I was getting ready to run out the door and head out to some of these attack locations and start cleaning stuff up. Yeah, been a long, hard, dirty couple days. One of the first locations went to was a Shahid strike. Fortunately, no one actually lost their lives on this site. I'm not entirely sure about how many wounded. Yeah, so a little bit about the work as a liquidator, as they're called here. Um, Basically, you go in and your job is to help clean up apartments, just buckets and buckets and buckets of broken glass, and removing the remnants of glass out of window frames, and you taking measurements and figuring out how to cover the windows. That way, people can get their apartments sealed back up, mostly with plywood. Uh, some people are concerned about drilling and screwing into the window frames. Not entirely sure how that whole process works, because I know some people seemed like they really didn't care because like the government will come in and take care of it and fix it up after. They just want their apartment sealed. But then there's other folks that are more concerned, like it's coming out of their pocket. So I'm not entirely sure how aid comes to these folks. It seems like every apartment you go into that has a little old lady, like they're not letting you out of the door without some cake, some cookies, fucking candy, like something. Everybody is so incredibly appreciative of all the volunteers and the work that they do. Yeah, the language barrier can be kind of interesting, since you don't go into anybody's apartment that's not there, because they tell you what they want, and how to seal up the window, or what works for them. But it's strange, the kind of going back to the generosity of them and being appreciative of volunteers coming in. But it's also strange because I suppose just after 4 years of this, it's just life. Even though most of the time, a lot of these folks, this is probably the first time that it's happened to them, and the roll of the dice, it happened to them. I'm sure there's some that it's happened to multiple times, but I think the thing that's interesting is like the spirit of the people is just like, it is what it is, and they're not letting it ruin their day. Like this is just part of it, I guess. And that is both depressing and inspiring, if that makes any sense. I don't know how else to describe it. The second day after the strike, went to, I seen a couple locations. I was actually struggling to find where the organization was at, and I just happened to bump into a American guy that I knew from Colorado that was with us the day before. He was working with a separate organization on that day, not the same organization. But and I seen that strike and what was left behind after that. Finally make my way over where I'm supposed to be, which was only maybe 8 blocks away or so. In that location, there was actually 2 strikes. It was either an Iskander, or I can't for the life of me remember one of the other ones. But so the destruction was substantially worse. Had blown a hole in a building, wrecked a bunch of cars. These 20-story high-rise buildings had windows blown out, obviously on the impact side of the buildings, but also the back side of the buildings, because the blast was substantial enough to blow out the windows on the opposite side of the building. And it was at least 3 of these high-rise apartments had considerable damage to them. I believe the number I heard was something in the order of 700 housing units that were damaged. The other organizations that were there on site, that was their second day at that particular site, but just our first day. Now, granted, things were wrapping up, but by the end of the day, a lot of the building materials that were dropped off, not entirely sure where they come from, whether it be the state or donations, but they just kind of drop the materials off wherever they can get them. You know, they need them quick. It's understandable. But there was kind of this courtyard inside the buildings, and they just dropped them off on the street. So we had to move just truckloads of 2x4s and plywood off of the street into the grassy areas and the courtyard areas and get them off the walkways and get everything cleaned up by the end of the day, because there was going to be a funeral for a child that was killed in that particular building. One of the things I've been asked about 1,000,000 times at this point, and I've never really known how to answer that question, is, what are you doing here? And I think back to my first video update where I was just kind of like, what the fuck am I doing here? It wasn't until that first apartment building that I went to, and it was one apartment in particular that finally kind of gave me my answer. And that particular apartment was up against the window, or where there used to be a window, was a crib. And strewn all along the floor were kids' toys. And then on the other side of the bed was a baby swing. And the blast wave had blown every window out of the balcony and out of the main bedroom, and absolutely everything was covered in glass, just everywhere. And the thing that kind of just stuck with me on that is, the reason I'm here is because if it was me and my family, I hope somebody would come to help. But yeah, it's been a stressful couple days, and I think we'll probably just leave it at that. So hopefully we'll cross our fingers and pray, or whatever the hell you do, that these next nights are a lot quieter than the last. So anyway, take care.